meeting to order on June.
Recording in progress.
On June 23rd, 2022. Could I please have the roll?
Burrell.
Here.
Coyne.
Here.
Klepper. Throckmorton.
Here. We did not receive any minutes in the last packet, correct? I don't recall seeing minutes, did we? To approve?
Yes.
We have any discussion on minutes or additions or changes? Anyone want to move to approve? I move to approve the minutes from March 24th. Do I have a second? Call the roll, please.
Burrell.
Yes.
Ballard.
Yes.
Coyne.
Yes.
Throckmorton.
Yes. Any reports, resolutions, or communications for the board before we please
Scanlon.
proceed?
Thank you, Development Services Manager. Each of the four board members and the petitioner received two correspondences that we received related to the first variance tonight. Just to clarify for anyone watching or those newly involved, we cannot transmit information to the Board of Zoning Appeals within 5 days of the hearing, but because those letters came in time to be transmitted and just were inadvertently omitted, it was determined that they could be given to you. We did receive other letters as well, 3 other correspondences, and so we let those people know that they were within the window, so we couldn't give those to you, but if they appear tonight and ask for those to be transmitted, then we can. So just FYI in case that happens, and that's all we have. Thank you.
And again, for purposes of disclosure to the public, the dates on those items that came to us were dated June 16th, which is beyond the 5-day window. The 5-day window is stipulated in, just so people know, it's stipulated in the Board of Zoning Appeals Rules of Procedure. Last one I had was 2018.
Oh, yes, great, thank you.
Just,
And it
just so people know that that is a policy by which we were required to.
yes, it also comes
abide.
directly from state code, so thank you.
Thank you. Any other reports, resolutions, or communications before this board? Thank you. We have one petition to be continued. Is that correct? Jackie, could you just name that for me, please, just to make sure I have it right?
Just 1 second here. It is an administrative appeal that we received, Administrative Appeal AA 1722. So that will be heard next month.
That will be heard on July 21st, 2022, at the next scheduled meeting.
Correct.
Thank you. That is the only continuation petition that I see.
Correct.
If that is accurate, the list of petitions to be heard today total 2. We have a petition for variance, V-14-22. We also have a petition for variance, V-19-22. We will hear 1422 first, Chris and Betsy Smith. Which staff member will be reporting on this?
Mr. Grulick.
Okay, and without further ado, let's turn it over.
Thank you. So this is a request from Chris and Betsy Smith for a property that they own at the northwest corner of West Kirkwood and Jackson Street. So the petitioners are coming forward tonight to request a variance from front building setback standards, front parking setback standards, and a determinate sidewalk variance in order to allow for this property to be developed with a new single-family residence in the mixed-use neighborhood scale zoning district. So as I mentioned, this is at the northwest corner of West Kirkwood and Jackson. This is within the conservation district that encompasses this area, and the property is zoned mixed-use neighborhood scale. The property is currently vacant. It previously contained a detached garage on it that was removed. All surrounding properties have been developed with a mix of mostly single-family residences and some multifamily residences. So as I mentioned, this property is undeveloped, and so you can see a site photo here showing the property. It's relatively flat in topography, no major or any environmental features whatsoever, very little grade change along the property. There is a sidewalk along Kirkwood, but no sidewalk along Jackson Street. So the petitioners are proposing to develop the lot with a new single-family residence. And since the property is zoned mixed-use neighborhood scale, it is held to the zoning district standards for the mixed-use neighborhood scale. Those standards were more tailored to, obviously, commercial or mixed-use developments. And there are not specific standards in the mixed-use neighborhood scale district that would pertain to just a single-family residence. So the petitioners are proposing a single-family residence and have worked through the certificate of appropriateness that is required for the conservation district. As part of that, they certainly looked at the plan for West Kirkwood that gave certain guidance for design of buildings, location of the buildings and building types, as well as maintaining the pattern of development and the block faces within the neighborhood as a whole. So as part of the certificate of appropriateness process, the petitioners have located the building to match the block face or the existing block face for the residence to the west. There is a residence to the north that is right on the property line or within, a foot or two. So the petitioners have set back the building a little bit from the Jackson Street, approximately 7 feet, to give a little bit more separation, but still maintain the block face as it would visually appear. So the UDO requires a build-to range within the mixed-use neighborhood scale of 15 to 25 feet from the property line, and then 7-foot side yard setbacks. So the petitioner is requesting, one of the variances that they are requesting is a variance from the front building setback standards from that 15 to 25-foot build-to range in order to allow for a 10-foot setback from Kirkwood. This would match the setback of the residence to the west and maintain that block face. And then they are requesting a variance to allow for a 7-foot setback from the Jackson Street frontage rather than the 15-foot setback. So again, this is to maintain that visual block face along Jackson Street as well as along Kirkwood. Within the mixed-use neighborhood scale, there is not a separate parking setback standard that would apply for a single-family residence. Instead, the setback is the typical setback for a commercial property that would require parking areas to be located 20 feet behind the front of the building. As this is being developed with a single-family residence and not a commercial development or a multifamily development, that setback for the parking to be 20 feet behind the building doesn't really translate well to this land use and this design that would have a typical garage on the north side and then the drive that would go directly into that garage. So the petitioners are proposing a 20-foot wide driveway along the north side that would come off of the alley. The driveway meets the maximum width allowance that is allowed for single-family residences. It is coming off of the improved alley, which is also a requirement and a standard, and then also meets the setback requirements from Jackson Street. So real quickly, I'll just kind of go through the elevations. Again, these were all reviewed with the certificate of appropriateness. So this has gone through the Conservation District guidelines, as well as the design guidelines for the plan for West Kirkwood, and has been found to be in compliance with all of those sections. So this is the garage that is on the north side that is accessed from that driveway. And then this is the west elevation. Again, these were all reviewed with the certificate of appropriateness. So the staff is recommending approval of the 2 setback requirements from the building setback as well as the parking setback. We found peculiar condition in that the location of the adjacent residences and the existing block faces are closer to the street than what the build-to range would require. The granting of the variance allows for the residence to be constructed at a location that is appropriate and was determined to be the best location based on the specific conservation district guidelines. Again, the front parking setback is related to this particular use, as that the UDO requirements would not allow for a typical driveway to be constructed that is appropriate for this use. Although the property is zoned for a range of commercial uses, because it is being developed with a single-family residence, it's more appropriate to design and build it appropriate to what would typically be seen for that type of land use. One of the other variances, the third variance, is a request from the sidewalk installation requirements. So because there is a sidewalk along Kirkwood, the UDO requires that sidewalk be constructed along Jackson Street. The petitioner is requesting a determinate variance to not require the sidewalk along Jackson Street. Going along with the requirements of the UDO in terms of finding practical difficulty or peculiar condition, staff does not find any practical difficulties in the use of the property in requiring the sidewalk to be constructed. It will still can be used as a single family residence. Requiring the sidewalk to be installed does not deprive the land owner of the use of the property. As I mentioned and shown in the initial site photos, the site is relatively flat, so there are no topographic constraints that would prohibit a sidewalk from being constructed. And so we do not find any variance criteria being met for the justification of the sidewalk variance. So with that, we are recommending that the board adopt the proposed findings, approve the variances for the building setback and parking setback, and deny the sidewalk variance with the two conditions. There were three conditions that were listed in the staff report. However, the second condition, the one related to the zoning commitment for determinate sidewalk variance, was listed in error, and it should only be the two conditions that the variances for the driveway location and the site plan is submitted only, and that a minimum 6-foot wide concrete sidewalk is required along the property frontage. So with that, I am happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Gurlich. Do we have a representative of the petitioner or the petitioner themselves who would like to speak before the board? Is it online?
So Dawn Gray is the petitioner's representative, and I believe that Chris Smith, the petitioner, might also be in attendance in person.
Okay, so can we have him put up? Who is it?
Hi. Dawn Gray.
Dawn Gray?
was-
Okay, Dawn. Thank you. You've stated your name. I just need to have you affirm or swear to the oath. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Okay. The petitioner has up to 20 minutes in which to present, and if all of that time is not used, that time will be reserved, and we will go back to the petitioner before a final motion is made. And you can proceed, 20 minutes.
Yes,
Go-
thank you for the opportunity to hear this case and for your review of it. Our intention with this project, as Eric described it quite well, was to respect the historic fabric of the near West Side neighborhood. In doing so, we carefully looked at the neighboring properties and the overall patterns of the neighborhood in locating the house where it is, as you see it on the site plan, in relationship with its offset on Kirkwood and on Jackson. It did receive the certificate of appropriateness from the Historic Preservation Board, and we also met with the neighborhood committee at the Near West Side Conservation District, and everyone was supportive of the project as well. And in addition, they were also supportive of the determinate sidewalk variance. I'll just speak a little bit to that. The neighborhood pattern of the Near West Side does not particularly include the inclusion of sidewalks on the north-south streets of this neighborhood, which Jackson Street is. Those are narrow streets, roughly 20-foot wide. And as you see, there are houses to the north, to the south that are right up next to the property. And these are historically designated homes that would not, that would require a demolition delay and much debate if they were ever to be torn down or removed. So it seems unlikely that a network of north-south sidewalks in this neighborhood would be something that would be, would happen in the near future. That said, we have located the house in a way that if in the future that were to be the case and sidewalks were deemed appropriate and established within the neighborhood, a sidewalk could be added to this property. There's nothing in what we're proposing that would make that a difficulty moving forward. We just think that because this is an undeveloped piece of or plot within this very developed neighborhood, it's an infill project, that to create a sidewalk along Jackson Street is really creating an anomaly within the neighborhood and may not be serving the neighborhood in a productive way. With that said, I do appreciate comments and would value and can answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. At this time, we have any questions from the board, and those can be directed to the staff or to the petitioner. And just as a reminder, the questions to the petitioner do not count against the 20 minutes of time. Any questions?
The letters that we received, are we to consider them or not consider them? We are. Okay.
Quick question for staff, I guess, and this is more the overarching, is there like I don't know, call it a bigger plan for where sidewalks would be going in the near west side? Like, obviously, the things are in place the way they are to create walkability for the neighborhood, but it seems like things are pretty random. And looking at the property that they're talking about to the north, it's got a huge retaining wall. So is there a larger overarching plan or scope to where sidewalks will go in this neighborhood?
No, there is not a citywide, I would say, or neighborhood-specific plan for sidewalks. However, we did craft and recently improve several sections of the UDO that deal with when sidewalks are required. Just to kind of remind or go over those standards again. So sidewalks are required along new construction for single family, along property frontages that front on classified streets, or if there are adjacent sidewalks or on that property, adjacent to the property, and those are being extended. So in general, sidewalks are required when you have property frontage on classified streets, and then extending when there are existing ones. So that is the situation here in this case, where there is an existing sidewalk along this frontage that would be extended then along the Jackson Street frontage. So does that help answer the question?
Yeah, thank you.
If I can add to that, the way that the code used to be written, and Eric alluded to this a little bit, we made sidewalk requirement changes, pretty big ones, in 2017. So the rule used to be that if you were building a new single-family house, no matter what the context was, if you were on a road, you built a sidewalk. We, kind of felt like in areas where there are literally no sidewalks, what benefit is that kind of giving? So we, as a department, took an amendment to council and got it approved to the changes that Eric now mentions, where that was too broad. But if you are of the things Eric mentioned, on a classified road or immediately adjacent or connecting to an existing sidewalk, we still feel that that's appropriate for those sidewalks to be built when new single families are built. So that's kind of where we are now.
Got it. Thank you for clarifying that.
Any other questions? Okay. Is there anyone from the public who would like to comment? And if so, you can step forward to the podium. I'll ask you your name. You'll state your name. I'll swear you in, and then you'll have 5 minutes you can speak. Hello? Can I have your name, please? Wait for a second. The microphone is not on. Try now.
Hi, my name's Joan Middendorf, Dr. Joan Middendorf.
Thank you. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony or what you will say will be the truth, that whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You have up to 5 minutes.
I'm Joan Middendorf. I live at 1010 West 7th Street. I've lived in Bloomington for 34 years, And I was on the Near West Board from 27 to 2011 when we got the Team of the Year from 2011 from putting in the traffic calmers. We had to go to every household in the Near West Side. Me and 2 other people did that. That's 250 households. So I'm very committed to my neighborhood where I've lived for 17 years. But in my 34 years in Bloomington, I lived on Fest Street. I've lived on the north side of Bloomington. I lived on Jefferson Street, and I've lived on Cambridge Court. So I've lived on 2 neighborhoods on the east side of Bloomington. Each time in those neighborhoods, it was different from where living on West 7th Street in the Near West Side, because on the Near West Side on 7th Street, in the Near West Side, at any time of the day or night, people are walking by. It's very different because people are either, going downtown to eat, they're going to the bars, they're coming home from work. They're going to work at 5 and 6 in the morning. People are walking to work. It's very different living in downtown Bloomington. And the sidewalks are key to this. This property is right up on Kirkwood, and there's a bus stop a half block down. So again, it's very important for people to be able to get to the bus, and sidewalks help. And helps more in the winter when it's dark, early in the morning and late at night. The sidewalks are for safety. Now, I retired from IU just in March after 37 years working at the teaching center, so I could host my grandchildren. I have my grandchildren down to Bloomington a lot, and we bike and ride our bikes around the neighborhood, and we walk around the neighborhood a lot. And sidewalks are making safety for my 9 and 10-year-old grandchildren. I did collect a petition when somebody made a petition after the last time. Let's see, there were 3 houses built in the last 5 years where the city required people, as they built a new house and it adjoined a sidewalk, to put a sidewalk in. Those sidewalks made a difference. I talked to 2 of those 3 households, and the people in the houses said, we didn't want to build the sidewalks on Oak and I think it's John Street, but they said, we really like the sidewalks now. People like those sidewalks. Every time we add a sidewalk in the neighborhood, people like it. So I took the petition around, and I found 18 people who were happy to sign the petition. Yes, we want the zoning. The main thing is we want the zoning board to know that people in the neighborhood want sidewalks. And also, you can see on our petition, kind of a weird thing has happened. Like I said, I was on the board for 4 years, and we got the neighborhood Team of the Year in 2011. Something weird is happening in our neighborhood board. They never tell us they're having these meetings with the people who secretly go to them and say, tell us we don't have to have a sidewalk, but don't tell the neighborhood you're having a meeting. I mean, they had a meeting April 13th with the 935 West 7th Street people. They never announced it to the neighborhood. And in the meeting notes with the neighborhood where they say, here's what we did in the meeting for the neighborhood, they never told people they had these secret meetings. So we're not allowed to have input to those, which is undemocratic and I think very sad for our neighborhood. So I want you to know there's a group of people, we had more people on our petition than the last petition. So people in our neighborhood are not happy with this, that the neighborhood association is not taking input from the neighborhood. We do want sidewalks. It's an important issue in our neighborhood. And in the future with climate change, IPCC says the most important thing cities can do is to densify the neighborhoods and make it possible for people to walk to work and not have to use cars. And sidewalks help with that. So that's what I'm here to say, and other people in the neighborhood are going to be here to talk too. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, wait, there was one more thing. You said, does the Near West Side have a plan for sidewalks? And I just want to say again, we had 3 sidewalks that were put in before this last one, and everybody had to do it. So it's been the habit in our neighborhood, if you built a house and it adjoins a street, you had to put in a sidewalk. And it's kind of disturbing. Is there going to be a trend that you're not going to have that happen? We're asking the city, please do continue this rule. If you build a house and it adjoins a street, that you have to put in a sidewalk. That's what our neighborhood is asking. Thank you.
Thank you. To your last point, just to clarify, it'll go into our minutes, but to address that directly to the city, you would have to go to the city council, your representative, to make sure that that's stated.
Thank you.
Sure. Do we have anyone else from the public who'd like to speak? Please come forward. You'll state your name and I'll swear you in. She did drop that sheet of paper. I don't know if that's important. Okay.
Hello, I'm Antonis Kyprianidis.
Thank you. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You have up to 5 minutes. Please.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to speak here. I am a physics researcher at IU, and I moved into the neighborhood in 2021. By the way, I live in the house right above the plot we're talking about, so it's 117 North Jackson. And naturally, I walk along the street pretty often, so I'm here to advocate for a sidewalk to be built there. About once a day, I will walk along the Beeline Trail. Sometimes I walk towards Kroger. Sometimes, occasionally, I walk to my work on campus. And I have to say that I'm not the only, I see other people walking with their dogs there or having strollers. And I have a stroller myself. We had a newborn baby June 1st. He's 20 days old, and we have started taking him out on the stroller. So that's the reason that we would especially appreciate the existence of a sidewalk over there. It would be both convenient and safer for us. And now in the summer, things are somewhat more manageable, but in winter, when it's rainy or snowy and there's less visibility for the drivers, that strip of the street is not super well lit, so they might not be able to see the pedestrians, especially if we're not wearing super bright clothes. So that's another reason I'm slightly worried about sealing the deal of no sidewalks. My wife also walks around the street, so it's two of us, by the way. That pretty much sums what I had to say. I have one closing comment, which is more of a personal opinion. I am somewhat surprised that it is not mandatory to have a sidewalk along all the streets that people could be walking along. There is a sidewalk along Kirkwood, and the plot we're talking about is connected, is contiguous with that. So if there's no sidewalk on Jackson, one would not be able to make like a left from Kirkwood and stay on the sidewalk. I think it would be awesome to start having sidewalks on that strip, even though other houses do not have them yet. There's 5 to 6 houses between Kirkwood and 6th along Jackson. There's no sidewalks, but I feel that this is a wrong to be made right and not something to set a record of just abandoning sidewalks. If there's opportunity for any questions towards me, I'll gladly take them. Otherwise, I'm done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Which direction?
I'm sorry, but
Not yet.
we don't question the public. Sorry, but save that, and it can come up, and it can be addressed by the petitioner or the city. Thank you. Anyone else from the public who would like to speak? Anyone online? Yes, we have one online. Okay, and who is that? Harris Snyder. Harris, are you there? Hi.
Yes.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, Kara Snyder, you have up to 5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much. And I'm unable to turn on my video, but I'll just keep the microphone on. So yes, I was one of the folks who submitted a letter, not within the 5 days. Apologies for that, but I'm glad to be able to share my comments here. So I would also like to thank folks who are advocating to build a sidewalk. I am here to also advocate that a sidewalk be built on the property under consideration. So I just want to echo everything Joan and Antonis have said, and I'll just add a few other considerations to that are specific to North Jackson. So I'm also a resident of North Jackson. I live with Antonis, who just spoke, at 117. And I was able to speak with the other residents of North Jackson before coming here today. So I'll share my opinion and also a little bit about theirs. So we have a new baby, as Antonis mentioned. And there are several parents on that street, actually. Among us, there are 7 children who live on North Jackson. And the cars, really surprisingly, do speed through that little strip. So to give you an idea, my neighbor across the street has a flower garden just in front of their house, and there's no kind of sidewalk of a buffer. And recently they put in metal bars around the flower garden because cars were routinely driving over their flowers. So there's just a lot of drivers coming through that little strip, sort of inconsiderate, speedy drivers. And now that there are, strollers and many kids on that street, I think it is a really important precedent to set to have new properties building a sidewalk, and hopefully, in the future that the sidewalk could extend along North Jackson, because it is heavily trafficked both by pedestrians and by cars. And without having this buffer zone, there really are sort of dangerous situations, especially when it's dark or rainy or icy. So the other point I would make is this, the same resident who had to put the metal bars in front of their house live on disability. So they're two residents and they're both disabled. And so the question that I put in the chat, but I was just sort of surprised that the Americans with Disabilities Act, I don't know this act well or its specifics, but I would assume that it would require sidewalks to make it easier for people to get around that have disabilities. So that would be a question I would pose to the committee. How does the Americans with Disability Act perhaps factor into this decision or not? And with that, yes, I will also cede my time. Thank you for hearing my points.
Thank you. Is there anyone else online wishing to speak?
Ms. Savostic, can you unmute?
Ms. Savostic?
Yep.
Yes, I'm unmuted.
Susan Savostic, could you please state your name?
My name is Susan Savastic.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I will swear and affirm that this will be the truth and nothing but the truth.
Thank you. You have up to 5 minutes, please.
I'm speaking from a letter that I sent to Ms. Scanlon earlier this week. Since I and my partner moved to the near west side in 2006 from Ohio, we have noticed that the car traffic in our neighborhood has been increasingly more threatening to pedestrians, from people breaking through stop signs, through traffic speeding up and down 7th Street. We live almost across from Fairview School. Sidewalks make it safer for me and my family to negotiate my neighborhood. I currently walk my dog 2 or 3 times a day and prefer to go on the side streets and smaller streets because of the risk of the traffic issues in my neighborhood. Despite what you may have been told by our neighborhood association leadership, many of us are in favor of having more, not fewer, safe passages in the form of sidewalks. At that point, I support putting in a sidewalk at the location that this meeting is addressing, and ask you to take my comments into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we see any others online who would like to speak to this petition?
Messages online.
Is there anyone in the space here with us that I overlooked? Okay. With that, then we will go back to Dawn Gray, who's speaking on behalf of the petitioner. You have the remainder of your time, which is, I believe, around 17 minutes. If you would like to address anything you heard or to further present your case.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, is this public comment? You'd like to? Oh, you're the petitioner. Okay. Oh, I see. Okay. Thank you. Okay, give me a moment. Okay. Ms. Gray?
Yes, I believe the property owner, Chris Smith, is here and would like to speak.
Okay. Could you step forward and give me your name? Chris Smith. Chris Smith, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And you and Dawn Gray have up to 17 minutes to continue to present your case.
Okay, just to clarify some comments, I didn't call a secret meeting of the board and ask for a sidewalk variance that was kind of implied by the lady that spoke earlier. I just want you to know that we didn't do that. I don't know if they did it, but I don't know who they are. I just was told to come to a meeting of the board and get approval for the historic design of the house, right, to meet their guidelines, so I could then go to HPC and get their approval. So I don't know about secret meetings. With regard to the sidewalk, determined sidewalk variance, there's no infrastructure in this neighborhood, specifically storm sewers. We can build the sidewalk, a 6 foot is extremely excessive. I'm probably gonna have to cut, short of it going on our property, to put it in the right of way, we're gonna have to cut street and narrow the street even more. And then we have a storm drainage problem because it's gonna channelize the water along that curb that's gonna get created along the asphalt, which is fine with me, but it's gonna create other issues. And then based on the comments I heard, it sounds like there's a lot of people on Jackson Street that are here in this meeting and in the room and I'd ask them, if I build this, if I do go ahead with the project and move in there and build this, would they commit to extending it on up to 6th Street? Because if it's that big of a concern, it shouldn't just stop at the alley, it should keep going. Especially if I'm gonna cut the street out to narrow the street to bring it up, they might have room to get around the houses that are north of us. So that'd be my request to the neighbors is, if I do this, they should meet my contractor, whoever's putting this concrete in, and have him take the thing on up north of the alley. And then it would be a productive sidewalk. Right now, it's just gonna be a strip. It's gonna be an expensive thing to do too, so, and I know that doesn't matter to you guys, but it's gonna make me, I'm gonna have to rethink what we're gonna do there if we have to build this now. It's the word determinate's important because it doesn't mean I never have to build it, it just means I'm not building it today. And if the city ever comes up with a sidewalk plan for that neighborhood, then they can make me build it. And it's a recorded document that anybody ever bought the house from me would know they'd have to deal with that on their title work. So, we do these in neighborhoods a lot. In Hoosier Acres, they do it. We did it over behind Shortstop. When you got a situation like this where there's no infrastructure, storm or sidewalks, it's pretty common. I understand the neighbors' concerns. I don't discount that. But until the city comes with a plan to add sidewalks to the near west side, it's just going to be kind of a waste of space, and it's a ton of impervious surface for a 6 foot sidewalk. I don't know when sidewalks became 6 foot, but that's pretty excessive, especially in this location. It's not going to look right. I've got a limit on impervious surface now. You guys have a 40% pervious surface requirement on all these lots, so that the sidewalk can't go on our property. So once again, I'm going to have to hire an engineer. We're going to have to design this thing. The way the city did the curb turnouts off of Kirkwood implied they were never building sidewalks. They did this funny wrap on them, and then there's a 4 foot offset of grass to the actual street. So the entrance is wider than the actual street itself. So we're gonna have to follow that curb line and then put an offset in the sidewalk and run it up the side of the street. If you'll let me. I have no idea what you guys are gonna make me do. Not you, but the city when we actually design that. So there's a lot going on here. This house north of this, you talk about fabric in the neighborhood, the guy, I don't know if it's their house, but there's a house just north that sits on the alley, and it's actually probably a foot over the property line. I mean, it's sitting on the road too, so I don't know how we're gonna get around that if we continue it north. So there's a lot to consider here. I understand their concerns, I understand the sidewalk need, but it's a tough conversation. So thank you, I'm done.
Thank you. Dawn Gray, do you have anything further during your time?
Sure, I would like to also emphasize that we met with the neighborhood committee because of the request of the HPC board, that we do that prior to being heard there. We requested the meeting from the appropriate person that was given to us as the contact. There was never any intention or desire to exclude anyone from the neighborhood. We were trying to do our due diligence, and so we were getting, and it seems to be there's conflicting thoughts and desires within the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. And at this point, I would ask that both Dawn Gray and the petitioner be available to us as we now enter into the period of questions from the board. And I think we had one here. Did you had a statement, so we'll start with you.
So if the determinate sidewalk is built on the on the east side of this property, going south to north,
We received a message Someone was couldn't figure out how to notify a public comment. So I don't know when you want to do that, just letting you know.
Let's do that next.
Do
I
that.
want to have her ask the question.
Yes.
Yep, just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Yes. No, go ahead. Yeah, I want you to yes.
Okay. Anyway, so the sidewalk that in question that we're talking about will be built on the east side of the property going north, from south to north. Are there any sidewalks that will be, obviously it's not going to connect anything because it takes the whole block, but are there any sidewalks that it will go in the same direction on the houses above? I'm trying to see if there's any, Eric, if you have that.
Eric will show you there. There is north-south sidewalk on the west side of Jackson, north of 6th Street.
North of 6th.
So
but
one
not-
block north, there is sidewalk on the west side.
So to clarify, there would be a half a block of no sidewalk.
Yeah, so you
Correct.
will build this sidewalk, it will be a sidewalk to nothing, then there will be a block with no sidewalk, and then another block with sidewalk.
So it would connect via the corner to Kirkwood to the south, and then there'd be
Yes.
half a block of no sidewalk existing currently. And then to the north of that, there is north-south sidewalk on the west side for, I think,
By the Methodist Church.
correct.
And did that answer the question from earlier?
Yeah, I'm just trying to determine what is the connection here.
Okay. With that, let's hold there. We're going to return. This is unusual, but I am given by bylaws some leeway. We're going to go back to an additional public comment. What's the name?
My name is Christine Glazer.
I'm sorry, Christine Laser? Is that correct?
Glaser.
Okay. And do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Christine Glazer.
I do.
Okay, you have 5 minutes, please.
I apologize. I wasn't able to get in earlier. I didn't know how. So I live at 917 West 6th Street, and I walk a lot. And I also see many others walking with children and with their dogs. I walk to campus for work, I go for grocery shopping, to the farmer's market, and for exercise all around the neighborhood. I also have grandchildren that come to visit, and we walk together to the park on 9th Street, to Wonder Lab. And I'm really grateful for all the sidewalks in my neighborhood. I know they keep me safe, and I would like to ask the Board of Zoning Appeals and the city to insist on sidewalks being built whenever possible and whenever there is a new development. I just think it's extremely important for our safety and for creating a walkable neighborhood. Thank you very much. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Now, we'll take a moment. Is there anyone else?
I don't see anyone else. I would recommend, per legal, that you give the petitioner the opportunity to respond
To
if
that,
they want to
and
respond.
I
to
would
that.
concur.
Thank you.
So either of those speaking, the petitioner or the person speaking on behalf of the petitioner, will give you time to respond to that last comment if you would like.
I have no other comment.
Okay, thank you. Let's hold for one moment. Thank you. Are we good? Okay, I'm going to now return us to the actual rules of order at this point. So after public comment and the response from the petitioner, it is appropriate to come back to the board for action. That action would be in the form of a motion. Then from there, we could have questions, comments before any roll is taken for a vote. So do I have a motion? And also, I was just reading this week, we do have the ability to, I believe, vote on a continuance before a motion is made if we decide that we feel it needs to be continued. We could dig out that language if necessary. Any motion?
I make a motion to the Board of Zoning Appeals to adopt the proposed findings for V-14-22 and approve the variances for building setback and parking setback, and deny the sidewalk variance with the following condition. This variance is for driveway location as submitted. Any driveway design or placement will require a new variance. A zoning commitment for the determinate sidewalk variance must be recorded and submitted prior to approval of the building permit. A minimum 6-foot wide concrete sidewalk is required along the property frontage.
Okay, I'd like to clarify, that was the old language. The one presented by Eric earlier took out item number 2. Would you like to amend that, the 2?
Yes.
In that case, if you would, just please give us the following conditions 1 and 2.
Okay, this variance is for the driveway location as submitted. A new driveway design or placement will require a new variance. A zoning commitment, a minimum 6-foot wide concrete sidewalk is required along the property frontage.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Motion has been seconded. At this time, we have the opportunity for any comments or questions, further questions to either the petitioner or to the staff. Do we have any comments or questions?
I have a question.
Please.
What is the practical difficulty of building this sidewalk?
And that is addressed to?
And that addresses to the petitioner.
The question is, what's the practical difficulty in constructing a sidewalk? And Chris, will you be answering that?
Don can probably answer it better than I can.
Ms. Gray, would you like to answer that, please?
Yes. Okay. I think the practical difficulty is from a overall planning perspective, or from a historic perspective, that the north-south streets in this neighborhood are narrow. They were not designed to include sidewalks originally. We were trying to respect what we felt the neighborhood, what we had interpreted the neighborhood to want, and felt that it was appropriate with the existing patterns of the neighborhood. Those streets are not heavily traveled, although I do respect and understand the concerns of the neighbors. So I think because this is an undeveloped lot in a historic neighborhood that is being overlaid with now modern and contemporary planning perspectives, we're asking that the consideration be given that this is not a historic pattern. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further to add? You're standing at the podium. Okay. I believe, Eric, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just had a quick question, mostly for I think for the staff. Where does the 6-foot wide concrete sidewalk, which I've seen built all around the city now, does it have to be minimum of 6 foot wide? Is there there's no existing sidewalk? If, as the petitioner stated, they'd have to they're going to encroach on the road and it's already narrow. Is there any flex on that? That's first question. I have a second question. But.
Yep, so the 6 foot is updated from our transportation plan. So that was an increase from the previous 5 foot. So the UDO says that we would work with them to get as much in the right of way as possible. If there are any portions that have to encroach on private property, then those would just be covered with a pedestrian easement. There's also a section of the code that says that any portions of a sidewalk that are on private property do not count against the maximum impervious or minimum landscaped area. So it would not impact their development in terms of having to create any additional permeable area as a result of the sidewalk. So it looks like there is, about 5 foot or so of right of way now. So the road would not have to be widened or narrowed, in order to accommodate the sidewalk But we would work out those specific details with the petitioner, but the 6 foot is the minimum standard that is in the transportation plan.
All right, thanks. And then my second question was just the sidewalk doesn't impact the setback requested on that west side of the property, correct?
Correct, yeah, that would not have any, the placement of the sidewalk would not have any impact on setbacks or location of the house.
Okay, thank you.
They could stay at this.
Tim, did you have any questions?
Yeah, just a quick comment. I appreciate the due diligence really that both sides have kind of done with this. I think, Chris, you're right. I think it's a tricky thing. I think the fact that we can't see the bigger, the long term right now, but I think that's the reason the UDO has these things in place, is that the goal is the walkability factor. It's important for really any neighborhood, but I used to live on the near west side, and I think if you had to find the number of walkers or people who travel on foot, bike, etc., the near west side would be one of the top neighborhoods out there, would be my guess. So I think I can understand where they're coming from on, why put this in now, especially with these north adjacent properties with retaining walls in them. I can understand that, and I can understand, kind of some of the frustration maybe around having to do it, but I think the overall in the long term is beyond what any of us can really see right now, and we entrust that with the planning group behind all of this, but also reinforcing what one of the public members said, which is, I think the environmental impact, I think that does play a role, and I think that is an important factor to take into consideration that differentiates the near west side neighborhood from most other neighborhoods where people can walk to work downtown and do that quite a bit. So that's all I've got. Thanks.
Any other comments? Please.
I have another question for Eric Gerlich. So the sidewalk will not impact the amount of impervious surface that the petitioner is allowed, correct?
Correct, it will not count against them.
Okay, thank you.
We have as Mr. Smith indicated, they're only allowed to cover 40% of the lot. We wrote into the UDO in the last 2 years a stipulation that says if for some reason you have to build a sidewalk and you can't fit it in the right-of-way and you have to put some on your private property, that portion that's on your private property will not count against your percentage of requirement that you have to leave open.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that that is.
Yes.
That it's what it's going to happen.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Eric, anything? Tim? I do have a question for the staff, which is, Mr. Smith had mentioned that we may have to encroach and build out into the street in order to meet this requirement. Is that accurate? Would that happen?
That's not enough. We won't, Eric, that's not going to happen. So if it can't fit in the grass that's immediately adjacent, then we will do a pedestrian easement for whatever portion has to be on the lot. That's what the UDO recommends.
What do you mean a pedestrian easement? I mean, are you saying it wouldn't
isn't
be as
6
wide
feet,
as requested?
So for example, if there's only, as Mr. Grulich said, 5 feet of space available, and then we require 6-foot sidewalk, so the sidewalk would be built 5 feet in the right-of-way, 1 foot on private property, then we would have a 1-foot pedestrian easement so that it's open to the whole sidewalk is open to the public on the private property.
Okay, and it would not encroach upon the roadway
Correct.
surface?
Correct.
Okay. I do have a question for Mr. Smith, if you would. Could you walk me through your understanding of that question I just asked? I'd like to understand a little bit more from the engineering standpoint.
Where's that picture? Is there a picture somewhere of this street? That one, the ground view one looking up Jackson? Up there.
And while that's coming up, I guess my question is, I'd like some clarification to make sure I'm clearly understanding you and what you just heard from the city, to make sure that we have an understanding of what's happening here.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what the city rules are. Dawn nailed it when she said, a 6-foot sidewalk is a current planning tool. It's not appropriate for this location at all. If that's what going to make me do, that's fine. But I still want to see the picture.
I'm so sorry. Eric, are you pulling up the picture he's asking for? Thanks.
Sorry, yeah, I'm trying to. Zoom was being goofy.
That's okay. I just wanted to know if I needed to do it. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, which,
That's probably it. Get the corner shot. So, I'm not counting that would have done it.
That shot there is good,
So
Eric.
see, when the city redid Kirkwood, I'll get back over here. When the city redid Kirkwood, they turned that curb up Jackson Street. See how they turned it up? But they didn't turn the sidewalk with it. And where that curb stops is, they widened the entrance wider than the width of Jackson. So we got that grass median. So if I'm gonna pull sidewalk up, I'm gonna take out the stop sign, I'm gonna tie in the existing sidewalk and run back a curb. Am I running it straight up and leaving a 5-foot strip of grass, or am I offsetting it and running up the edge of asphalt? Well, I'm gonna wanna offset it, because if not, almost all 6 feet of that sidewalk's gonna be on my property, taking up my space. So I'm not real happy about that. So I'm gonna have to go meet with an engineer, we're gonna have to design all this, and we're gonna run this thing up and do whatever we have to do to keep it as much in the right of way as possible. But I don't think I'll be required to rebuild storm infrastructure. Maybe I will. But if I've got to run storm infrastructure up this street to handle the water, we're going back to an apartment building. I mean, we're trying to move down here. This is probably a $40,000 conversation on an already a $30,000 permitting process. So I'm not asking you to change your mind because of that, but I mean, this is just getting onerous. So, I mean, I can do something else. So if you want to maybe put the sidewalk in, that's fine. We'll figure it out one way or the other. But my guess is something's going to have to happen here, and my guess is the city's going to put it all on me. And it's going to be way beyond a sidewalk, because this is not set up for it. And when they rebuilt Kirkwood, they didn't even take it into account. So if the city wants to have sidewalks in all the downtown neighborhoods, that's fine. They need to put it in the transportation pedestrian plan and have a plan for it, not just a rando with 6-foot sidewalk width that's just ludicrous. So that's just how I feel about that.
Thank you.
And I don't discount what they want. I understand why they want them, but this isn't the neighborhood for it. It's like putting them in Hoosier Acres. It doesn't make any sense.
So for the staff, then my question is, how would this proceed if the motion that's before us is voted through? Could you walk us through what would happen then?
Yep, so we would work with the engineering department on the appropriate location and the design of the sidewalk in order to get that in to not impact the storm structure and the curbing, and find a solution that will get that in to the maximum extent possible within the right of way.
Yes, so I'll add, were they not here asking you for multiple variances, so then they would just be applying for a building permit, and on that building permit in the design, they would be showing how they are meeting the sidewalk requirements. So those requirements come from the transportation plan. That's a community vetted document that contains the 6-foot minimum requirement for roads just like this. Maple, which is 2 streets to the west, has sidewalks north-south. They're 6 feet wide. They run the length. Just because the neighborhood is historic or houses are old and the people who developed them at that time didn't have the money to put in appropriate infrastructure, doesn't mean that for the rest of the existence of those homes, when possible, we shouldn't try to improve those public amenities. That's just not what historic preservation is trying to do, to stop improvement of these areas. Yes, this doesn't have an existing corner update, but that is something that we will work with the engineering department, as Mr. Grulich said. And if, as on Maple, the most practical design is to have sidewalk immediately adjacent to the roadway, then we are happy to have that. And if the most practical design is to have a 5-foot tree plot in between, then we'll do that. That's something that we figure out once we see actual plans and not just, kind of theoretical discussions about what people think can fit here.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Any other questions? Any other questions? Yes, we have one question.
So the
Yeah, I have a question for the staff. So the 6-foot requirement is basically non-negotiable. That's going to happen if it butts up to the side of the street or if it goes into the petitioner's property.
Design standard in the code that if someone has a reason why they practically cannot construct that, then they would come here with a variance. So if there are practical difficulties related to the actual physical characteristics of the site, then we would entertain smaller. It's just becoming a industry standard to have them be that wide. You can imagine, you know, 2 people, 1 person in a wheelchair and someone coming toward them. Having that extra space is just becoming standard, and that's what we did when we updated our transportation plan.
And so I guess my reason for that question is, in the event a smaller sidewalk is needed, petitioner's gonna come back and ask for another variance. Let's assume this gets approved. There would be another request for another variance. Is there a way for us to approve a variance tonight that allows for the city to use its judgment to make a smaller sidewalk so they don't have to come back and ask for a variance?
Sure, that's a great question, but I don't believe so, because for the reasons of, if you're requesting a change to a development standard like that, we want you to notify your neighbors to, you know, put the ad in the paper, all of those things. And so someone who, you know, may for some particular reason be very interested in that type of detail wouldn't know that that was happening here. So legal can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's accurate. Yeah, a new petition would have to be prepared.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was just looking on that issue of if the petition is voted down, I don't believe it can come before us for another 6 months.
Correct, yes. But he's talking about for a different development standard variance.
Different.
Yeah.
Okay, different variance.
Correct, that could come back.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. Just answer, Flavia, anything? Any other questions?
Well, I go back to my question of the practical difficulty, and I just heard about the historic part. But that picture that I see in the corner, that the curb encroaches into the property, and then the grassy part is, can you show that again? Yeah, so I guess what I would like to know is, where is the sidewalk gonna go? Is it gonna go where the grass is unencumbered with the curb? So, yeah.
So real quick, there is some language in the UDO that does seem to give some deference to the director and city engineer to allow modifications to sidewalk width, you know, if certain conditions are met or demonstrated. So there might be some areas that we can work at a staff level, you know, if 6 foot doesn't work here. But in terms of the location, you know, certainly the easiest suggestion or the location would be behind the curb. And then it could either wrap around to the east a little bit to stay more within the right of way, or it could extend north. You know, there are a couple different situations there where this could be solved. But, you know, what staff basically came back to with the variance criteria is that, you know, there's nothing unique about the property that doesn't allow for the sidewalk to be installed. There are lots of options that we can work with the petitioner at a staff level to get it installed on this property, you know, without significant difficulties.
Okay, so the code requires a 6-foot sidewalk with a 5-foot separation. That is what code requires. Then code allows that the transportation department can allow some changes to that, but 6 foot is still required. The thing that it allows is the removal of the 5-foot tree plot. So the basic requirement is tree plot, sidewalk. When an engineer looks at this site and if they say for whatever reason it doesn't make sense to have that separation, if the planning and transportation department director agrees with that assessment, he can allow them to put that sidewalk immediately adjacent to the asphalt. It's still going to be 6 feet wide with a curb. So the 6 foot is not something we can change without them coming back to see you. It's the location of where that sidewalk is going to be.
It's at your discretion.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I am concerned with his 7-foot setback and a 6-foot sidewalk. So is he gonna have a 1 foot?
No, because right. So based on what Eric said, it appears that there are about 5 feet.
5 feet of right-of-way.
Right in the right-of-way. So you can see here on the drawing. So our goal will be, it is very likely that a sidewalk, I believe in this situation, would end up having no separation from the road, just like the sidewalks on Maple, which is 2 blocks to the west. So ideally, I mean, you think about separation and comfort for people on sidewalks. They feel better if it's separated by a tree plot. That's what the baseline is. But that's not realistic everywhere. So we do allow for sidewalks to be built immediately adjacent to asphalt if necessary, and it seems like that might be necessary in this case.
Back to that picture, is the width of the street designated by the grass that we see to the north, or is it designated by that curb that's coming out of the sidewalk at the corner next to the stop sign? Did the city build that curb at the edge of the roadway, or is it offset from the roadway?
So the curbing is in the right-of-way. There is additional right-of-way beyond the curb where the sidewalk can be installed. You know, as I mentioned, you know, there are a couple different scenarios here where, you know, the sidewalk joins up with the existing sidewalk and then immediately curves around the stormwater inlet and stays majority of it in the right-of-way. You know, so the curb inlet itself doesn't necessarily have to be moved or impacted. Yeah, that's something, you know, that we mentioned that we would work out with the engineering department of how to best solve this to get the sidewalk in here.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Question, if the sidewalk will have to, I mean, if we are moving stormwater, then we're causing all kinds of issues here. So you
Yeah, so
say,
there-
you say that
appears that
there
the-
are ways to work around it, the existing.
Yes, it looks like that there are situations or a scenario here where they could move the sidewalk to work around that stormwater inlet and then still stay within the right-of-way for the majority of the property.
Any further questions? Seeing none, we have a question before the board. Someone would like to call the question? Just for fun, call the question. Yep. Okay, we have a motion to call. We've called the question, so let's go ahead and have a roll call, please.
Coin.
Oh, I'm sorry, let me be clear. The vote of yes means to approve your motion, which means to approve everything except deny the sidewalk variance. Yes. Yes, with the 2 items that were provided. So to be clear, the motion in front of us is that we adopt the proposed findings for V-14-22, approve the variances for building setback and parking setback, and deny the sidewalk variance with the following condition of 1, this variance is for the driveway location as submitted. Any new driveway design or placement will require a new variance. And item 2, a minimum 6-foot wide concrete sidewalk is required along the property frontage. That was the motion in front of us with the second. A vote of yes would be to approve that. A vote of no would be to deny that motion. Is that clear? Yes. Okay. So with that, questions?
Sorry. So with this current recommendation, when he goes to build the sidewalk, the city's going to work with him to make it work? Meaning about everything we've talked about, go around the...
The denial will result in having to go back before planning, before the city to work through the site plan. Is that correct?
Well, I just want to know what's going to happen if it's denied. Does he have to enter everything back and do everything again? I need to know what will happen if this gets denied or approved.
If the full petition is denied.
Is that what you mean, or just
No,
the
no.
sidewalk?
Sorry. If the sidewalk is denied,
Yeah. Then he'll need to work with the city to build a sidewalk before he gets occupancy of his house. He doesn't have to build it like in the next, 3 months. He can show it on his site plan, pull his building permit, and continue to work with the engineering department on design for it to be either bonded for or built before he gets occupancy of his house.
That's what I want to know. He doesn't have to go and build it right away.
No.
Okay.
Okay, with that, we've called the question and would like to have a roll call, please. Again, yes, it would be to approve the motion. No would be to deny the motion.
Okay. Coin,
Yes.
Ballard,
Yes.
Throckmorton,
Yes.
Burrell.
Yes.
Okay, with that, the motion is approved per the recommendations given. Thank you. We'll move on to the,
On the procedural, call it question.
well, it's because it went on so long, you can just call it, that way it's in, just say I call the question.
Call the question.
Yeah. Anyone but me can just say I can call the question.
Got it.
Yeah, if you call the question, just because we talk so long, it's a way to say it's done, or if no one does it, I can just say seeing none, then I'll move that we go ahead. But it's just another way to stop me. You can stop it by calling the question, just, we're done, let's go. Okay. All right. The next item on the agenda is variance V-19-22, People State Bank, and who do we have that's presenting that from the staff? Is that Gabriel?
Is Gabriel Holbrow?
Okay, Gabriel Holbrow. Okay, please give us a presentation on this, please.
Certainly. Thanks for hearing this petition this evening. We are looking at 202 West 17th Street. It's the corner of 17th and College, and it also goes all the way along the north side of 17th Street to Woodburn Avenue. It's approximately 1 3/4 acres. It's zoned mixed-use corridor, MC. In the comprehensive plan, it's urban corridor. Right now, there's an existing People State Bank branch and a former bottling plant. They're proposing a financial institution, office, and drive-through. Surrounding uses to the north include multifamily dwellings and office. To the south, there's a vehicle fuel station, commercial, also single-family dwellings. To the east is Miller Showers Park. To the west are single-family dwellings along the west side of Woodburn Avenue. Also along the north side of 17th Street there, the City of Bloomington Engineering Department is in the final stages of design and planning for a new multi-use path along the north side of 17th Street. The petitioners and People State Bank are proposing to redevelop the site into corporate office and a local bank branch with a drive-through. We'll have one building for a total of 4 stories is how we counted in the UDO, although the main floor will be the second floor, so the access from the parking lot will come in to the to what I would consider the second floor. But in any case, about 34,200 gross square feet. It requires major site plan review by the Plan Commission, and it's been placed on the schedule for the Plan Commission's public hearing July 11th. So there are 3 variances that the petitioner is requesting here. One is for the front parking setback variance to allow parking areas between the building and Woodburn Avenue to the west. The next is a driveway location variance for drive access on 17th Street. And the third is a driveway pavement width variance for that same driveway on 17th Street. So to take those one by one, the front parking setback variance, this is an excerpt from an exhibit that the petitioner submitted with their materials. It illustrates the issue very well. The pink area there is what would be allowed due to the front yard setback. So the front yard setback has to be from all of the public streets around it. So College, 17th, and Woodburn has to be at least 20 feet behind the building wall nearest the 3 adjacent streets. So there, as proposed, their parking is 20 feet back from the building wall from College, from 17th, But from Woodburn, if they had to be 20 feet back from the building wall, they'd have to be all the way over into that pink area. So they're requesting a variance to allow parking closer to Woodburn than the edge of the building. Excuse me, so this here says, up at the top it says front parking setback variance, but this is meant to be an illustration of the driveway location variance. The UDO specifies that drive access must be on the lowest classified street. Here, College Avenue on the right side of the screen is classified as a primary arterial. 17th Street on the bottom of the screen is classified as a secondary arterial. And Woodburn Avenue over there on the left is not classified, which is also known as a local street. So the drive access has to be in the lowest classified street. That would be Woodburn Avenue. They're requesting to have drive access also on 17th Street, which is not the lowest classified street. So to have any access there, they require a variance. And the third variance is driveway pavement width. The issue is that the driveway width between the edge of the street and the front building setback line is limited to a width of 24 feet. Let's zoom in a little bit. So that red line there is the front building setback line. And you can see that the driveway, in one sense, is 20 feet wide at the property, at the edge of the right-of-way. I believe in this case, the upper of the two dotted lines is the actual right-of-way. There was some right-of-way acquisition involved in the multi-use trail project. So it's about 20 feet, or it is 20 feet wide there, but before it gets to that red line, the front building setback, it widens out. So the width there is approximately 39 feet 9 inches. That's more than 24 feet. So that's one issue with how that spreads out there. And the other part is that the UDO requires that any part of a driveway that runs less than 45 degrees from parallel. So if it's, imagine the 45-degree diagonal, if it's less than that to the street, it can't be in front of that line. And so that little sliver of that part of the driveway in front of that red line is a little bit less than 45 feet, 45 degrees from parallel. So that is also an issue. It's grouped with this one because it really has to do with the width of the pavement there. So those are the three variances. So the recommendation that we have for the findings for each of those, for the front parking setback, given the configuration of the site with 3 street frontages, the location of the proposed building near the corner of 17th and College, and the location of the parking on the Woodburn side of the building, it really maximizes the public realm facing and pedestrian accessibility aspects of the site design. So it's not exactly what the UDO says, but it maximizes the qualities that we're looking for. There's the question of does it affect adjacent and nearby properties in a substantially adverse manner? Any potential adverse impact will not be substantial. The petitioner has proposed a landscape area approximately 9 feet wide from the edge of the proposed sidewalk along Woodburn to the edge of the parking lot surface. That's at least 1 foot more than that is bare required by the UDO, and it will be landscaped and planted with trees and shrubs in accordance with the landscaping requirements of the UDO. To the criteria of whether it results in practical difficulties and that the practical difficulties are peculiar to the property and that the development standards variance will relieve the practical difficulties, we propose a finding that without the variance, the area available for parking would be severely limited and the amount of surface parking that could be provided would be both significantly below the maximum amount allowed by the UDO and also significantly below the amount necessary to support the proposed permitted use as a bank branch and corporate office. So that's for the front parking setback. The criterion findings for the other two, we've grouped them here together because if the driveway pavement width only becomes relevant if there is driveway access there. So they kind of come as a, treating them as a little bit as a package here. So the first criteria, the approval will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community. We propose a finding that the granting of the variance to allow two-way drive access on 17th Street will be injurious to the public health and safety by allowing turning vehicles to interrupt the flow of pedestrian and bicycle traffic on the planned multi-use path, as well as the flow of automobile traffic on 17th Street. Of course, there needs to be access to properties. This is a balancing act that we have to have in the city, but the UDO contemplates that and requires that the access be on the lowest classified street. So this will be a detriment. There's a similar proposed finding for the driveway pavement width variance that having the drive will affect the flow of pedestrian and bicycle traffic and also automobile traffic. In addition, the driveway width greater than 24 feet will enable more vehicle-focused infrastructure in the street frontage area than is necessary to provide access. Will the use and value of the area adjacent to the property be affected in a substantially adverse manner? The proposed finding is the same for both. It just repeats that interfering with the flow of traffic on 17th Street and the planned multi-use path may have some adverse impact on properties along 17th Street and in adjacent neighborhoods. For the third criteria, the proposal for the driveway location variance. The drive location standards in the UDO explicitly anticipate the case of corner lots, and that's where they require the drive access be provided on the lowest classified street. Adherence to this requirement does not pose a practical difficulty to the use of the property because access can be adequately provided on Woodburn Avenue, as shown in the proposed site plan. There are no practical difficulties on this site that require the relief of the variance. For the driveway pavement, variance, there's nothing particular to this property that creates a need for a wider driveway surface. That's in opposition to the goals of the UDO related to improved interface between the site and the public pedestrian realm. The driveway intersection could be relocated a few feet to the north so as to conform to the driveway width standards in the UDO and still provide radiused or softened curves. Based on these proposed findings, the department recommends that your board adopts the findings, denies the requested variance from the drive location standards and the driveway surface width standards to allow the drive access at 17th Street, and recommends that you approve the requested variance from front parking setback standards with the following condition. The front parking setback variance is approved for the site plan, including building and parking lot design as submitted with this petition.
Okay, thank you. Is there a petitioner representative available? Please give me your first and last name.
First name, Steve Brehab.
Okay, and do you swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
And you'll have up to 20 minutes. And again, if you don't use that full 20 minutes, when we do come back to you later to answer any questions, you will have another opportunity to expand and use the remainder of your time.
Thank you very much.
Please.
Gabriel, I presume that you have available the exhibits that we submitted?
Certainly.
Could you please bring up the existing conditions exhibit? I think it's exhibit 1. I guess it was our exhibit 1. I'm sorry. Okay, this exhibit shows the site in its present conditions. It's the old Pepsi bottling building. It's been there, I'm going to say forever, because it seems that way. And People's Bank has had a branch bank for several years on the end of the building. So in looking at the 17th Street frontage right now, there's about 212 feet of driveway along 17th Street. There's a loading dock. You can see in the Google Street View image a truck backed up to it. So there's an existing loading dock on one end of the building. There is perpendicular parking that allows vehicles to pull in from 17th Street and then back out onto 17th Street to leave. There's also a drive access close to the intersection that provides access to the drive-through window and the front of the bank. If you come around the corner then on College, and the aerial photo shows it pretty well on the top there, there's about 113 feet of driveway there where the trucks just pulled out from the bottling plant out onto 17th Street. So if we can toggle through to the second exhibit now. So the second exhibit shows the city's proposed side path that Gabriel mentioned. It's a project that we were kind of aware of, but we didn't know was this far along in design until we started working on the site. So what Gabriel's going to pull up is kind of an excerpt from the city's side path plan, the current plan, overlaid on the aerial photo. So if People's Bank doesn't do anything on this site and the city builds the side path, what you'll have starting at Woodburn is a little pink area of side path, and then that loading dock that we just looked at will remain in place. Then you'll have another little pink area of side path, and then the back out parking, though reduced, remains in place. Then you'll have another little pink area of side path, and then the drive to the drive-through, and more parking will remain. No changes at all planned on College, so you still have the 100 and some feet of drive area for College, or drive access out onto College. Now, I realize that the Unified Development Ordinance says whenever you redevelop a site, you bring the site up to current code, but it's obvious that if nothing happens on the site, the city is perfectly fine with a loading dock crossing the pedestrian path, with back-out parking off of 17th Street crossing the pedestrian path, with drive access crossing the pedestrian path. And we feel like what we are proposing, even though that we have a drive shown off of 17th Street, is a significant improvement over this. We're channelizing, instead of 1, 2, 3 potential points of conflict with vehicles and pedestrians, we're bringing that to one point at the center of the site. The peculiarness of this site, the exhibit that Gabriel used to show how it has 3 street frontages and limits parking to that little area, is also, it impacts People's State Bank's customers' ability to access this site. Right now, you're asking them, if they're coming up College, with the city's recommended finding of facts, to practically drive all the way around the block, to drive to Woodburn to access the site. We do not feel that it's detrimental to have drive access onto 17th Street. It's, as I said, it's a significant improvement over what's presently on the site, and it's also a significant improvement in providing a greater length of side path along 17th Street. Could you flip through to your exhibit, Gabriel, that showed the driveway? Yeah, I think it's the third one. I can't remember my own exhibits, I'm sorry. Yes, can you zoom in a little bit there? And I will readily admit, on this variance, In all honesty, it took us a considerable amount of time to understand what the variance was. We had several conversations with staff, and they responded that we exceeded the driveway width. And each time we looked at this, we looked at the driveway width near the right-of-way line, where it's 20 feet. And the area that Gabriel used in his exhibits and then shows here is what is creating that excessive width. Now, we could make the drive go all the way up and have square corners and then meet the spirit of the ordinance, but it would make it so difficult for anybody to turn in and try to drive around a square corner. You'd have everybody driving over the curb. So we could slide the drive a little bit further north and totally eliminate this variance. That's not a problem to do. But what is a problem, we feel, is eliminating the drive access on 17th Street altogether. With that being said, I'd like to introduce Johnny Lindsay, the president of People's Bank, and I believe he has a couple words he'd like to say, please.
Okay, Mr. Lindsay, step forward and state your first and last name, and I'll swear you in.
Good evening. My name is Johnny Lindsay.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
How much time, Jackie, do we have left?
He has about, I would say, 14 minutes?
14 minutes, please.
Good evening. Thank you, board members, for your time this evening. I just wanted to express some of the plans and ideas that our bank has. We're a local community bank here in Monroe County, the last local community bank in Monroe County. And this is a pretty substantial project for us. We're committed to this county and to Bloomington, the city itself. And in doing so, this building really represents an opportunity for us to continue to provide community banking in Bloomington. We're planning to relocate a number of our offices to this facility. So it will be a big corporate office for us, as well as in a much larger branch than what we have right now at 17th and College. And we think that'll be beneficial to the community, really. It's a substantial building at 34,000 square feet, as you saw. And that requires some access that we feel like accessing only from Woodburn really is not conducive to a business like ours, where we have drive-through access as well as customer parking and our own employee parking. What I would stress is that, first of all, I think the UDO is a little bit unclear. It doesn't, when you read the UDO, it doesn't look like it really addresses multiple corner lots. It almost sounds like when you read it legally, it looks at two streets rather than streets. So I think our property is a bit unusual in that we have 3 streets surrounding our property, 2 corners. The UDO references the word corner and not plural. So to me, it doesn't really necessarily, I understand the idea behind the UDO, but I don't think it really addresses a site like ours. So I would ask the board to consider that in evaluating this second drive access on 17th Street. As Steve mentioned, we've certainly tried to work with the city, with the planning staff to restrict, we're losing access on College, which is not our preference. We would rather have access on College Avenue as we do now. There's 100 feet of access, ingress and egress, that we have on the College Avenue now that we're giving up, basically, as part of this redevelopment. But we understand the purpose and the design of the UDO for this. 17th Street is also important to us because that's our entrance now. This is where our customers know us. This is how they find us. Woodburn would be difficult. Woodburn is a much smaller street. It's listed as an unclassified street. It's a neighborhood street, honestly. There are houses across to the west from our property. I don't believe our residents next door to us would want all of the traffic flowing into that entrance and exit. When we had a neighborhood meeting, they certainly expressed that consideration, that moving all of that traffic in and out of Woodburn would be detrimental to them. And if you look at that drive, if you've seen that drive, you'll realize it's a very narrow street, not conducive for the amount of traffic that would have to flow in and out of there, both customer and employee traffic. I think that should be something that the board should consider when they consider detrimental. I believe 17th Street is actually better. It gives more access, it gives more open access, and it's not as as restrictive as Woodburn is. So I certainly think that should be considered when you're considering what's detrimental to the existing neighborhoods, the existing owners surrounding us. Obviously, for us, if we don't have access to 17th Street, that's really going to make us change our plans. We're going to have to reconsider this. When we're doing a development of this size, of this magnitude, with this many people, potentially 50 to 75 people employed in the city of Bloomington, we feel like access is important. It's important for our customers as well. It's important for us as a bank to make sure that as a business that it's viable, that this location is suitable for what we're trying to do. And we're concerned having just that Woodburn access would make this less viable, less approachable for us as a business, and we would have to consider other locations. And what that does mean, as Steve mentioned, the design right now that the city has proposed with the new multi-use path along 17th Street is 3 separate entrances, which I don't think would be what this, I'm not sure that would be better than what we proposed, in all honesty. Having that entrance and exit off of 17th Street, 1 limited entrance and exit access rather than 3, I think would be better. And we would certainly like to be a part of Bloomington. We think this is a great location. We obviously love the city. We've got 5 locations in the city, and we think this will be one of our premier locations, and we would love to redesign this location. If you look at the actual design of the building, the Pepsi property is old. The warehouse is significant and ugly. We would be eliminating all of that, designing a new building that's more modern, has community access available to it, and honestly adds quite a bit more pervious surface. We have quite a bit of green space designed into it, whereas now it's all asphalt or building. So I think there's some significant advantages that this building brings, that this site brings, and the access from 17th Street is very important to us as a business, and we would like to ask that the board consider that when they're weighing this decision. Thank you.
Just for my sake, Jackie, how much time is left?
8 minutes, 15 seconds.
Okay, so just a little over 8 minutes if we come back and their time is asked for. Thank you. Okay, at this point, are there any questions from the board to either the petitioner or to the staff or procedural?
Excuse me, sorry. I'd like to say Tim Cover is in the, and he raised his hand. Would you like me to
You
have
want him as the
speak
public, or would you like him as part of the petitioner
He's
time?
a petitioner representative.
Oh, he is?
Yeah,
So we'll recognize him and have him speak then.
just want to make sure.
It was Tim.
Yep.
Tim who? Cover. Okay. Mr. Cover, you there?
Should be able to unmute Tim.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can. State your first and your last name, please.
This is Tim Cover.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay. Currently, we have 8 minutes and 15 seconds left of petitioner time. Please.
Okay. First off, I'd like to say we fully support the staff's recommendation for approval of the additional or the ability to park between Woodburn and the rest of our main building. And we heard that same support from the neighborhood when we had our neighborhood meeting, along with support from them on having a access point off of 17th Street. Historically, this is a commercial site. It always has been, and moving forward, it will continue to be. And so having access from commercial streets, College and 17th, makes perfect sense. When we started the project, we understood with the development of the site that we would lose space or access off of College. That wasn't a popular item with the bank, but we understood that. And so we continue to work with engineering in order to improve the layout that was shown with multiple curb access points on 17th down to a single spot that would allow customers to easily find and see the drive-through and be able to find a way into the site to get to that drive-through. I believe that, staff is doing our job, but they are looking very literally at the translation of the UDO, in that the way it is presented, we have a unique situation with 3 streets. Staff pointed that out with the reasoning for allowing or approving the first variance. With having the parking, that it is unique to have 3 streets around the site. We're looking at that the same way with this curb entrance. UDO says you move it to the lowest designated street. If Woodburn did not exist in a normal corner situation with 2 primary streets, we would be going down to 17th Street as our point of access. We would not be here, we would not be having this discussion, because that's where we would be asked to put the drive entrance. We're simply asking that in this unique case with 3 drives, that we view this the way a typical situation would be. And finally, if from the standpoint that the city felt that having the path interrupted by multiple entry points was not dangerous to basically people using that path, then why is it now considered dangerous to have us only have a single point of entrance? That's all. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And now, how much time is left?
5 minutes.
5 minutes, thank you. Okay, at this point, we'll back to the board for any questions of the petitioner, of the staff, or any questions, procedural questions.
Question for the petitioner, please.
To any of the petitioners
Yeah,
who want
any
to
of
choose,
the
thank you.
petitioners. Yes, any of them that can answer. Probably more directly to People's State Bank. So in your line of business with the drive-through, I mean, if I observe, and because of this petition, of course, I looked at the other sites that you have to see if this warrants the variance. All the other sites, you have 2 entrances because of the drive-through. You have 1 entrance. I went to the Ellettsville site. You have 1 entrance where the customers go in, go through the drive-through, and they get out on another entrance, out of a second. Same thing with the location on Claritz. You come in through 1 entrance and you get out of another entrance. I guess what I'm trying to get to this, to here is this something necessary to operate your business? Because I saw this connection in every single site that you have currently. Even the Kirkwood site that now, I guess that building is sold, or it used to be, you would come in from 1 side, go through the drive-through, and get out of another driveway. So when I see this plan, I see the reasoning for 2 cuts, 2 driveway cuts. And even the current location on 17th, you have 1 cut on 17 and another cut on College. You come in and you get out. I guess I wanted to know if this is something that by not having the 2 cuts, it will affect the way your business is operated.
I would say yes. If we only have the 1 access, the 1 driveway access that's both entrance and exit, it would affect our business significantly. Not only because of, as you said, typically you have an entrance and exit with a drive-through. It would be unreasonable, I think, to ask customers to continuously loop around property like they would have to with the Woodburn access. I think the Woodburn access is also challenging. That road is a difficult road to navigate because of its width, and Again, I would strongly suggest that it's a neighborhood road, it's a residential road, not really anticipating the amount of traffic that would be going in and out of Woodburn by itself if that's the only entrance and exit.
You can stay there, second
Yeah,
question.
I'll stay.
Do you know how many cars go in and out I mean, I know that's,
You know, Ms.
are there
Burrell,
any
that's a great
studies?
question.
Any studies that,
I do not have traffic counts in and out of our current drive-through. What I would say is that this building is being built for the next 30 years. We plan to grow. We plan to grow significantly, and this building will be our primary location in the Bloomington market, in our downtown location. So I would anticipate that even traffic counts today would be much higher. Not to mention the number of employees that we plan to employ at this building. The 50 to 75 employees who will also be entering and exiting this property will be significant. Makes a lot of sense to have two entryways and exits, both from a practical standpoint, as well as, you know, if there are problems with an emergency issue or a road closure due to, you know, a city construction project or something like that, we're not limited completely and lose access to our property with just a single entrance.
I have one last question,
'Kay.
sorry. So, and this might be an unusual question, but bear with me. So in terms of safety and security for a facility like a bank that holds money,
Sure.
is this, the design you currently have reflects what operates best? I don't know if there's, and God forbid, but if there's a robbery or some situation, how does this work out?
You know, I would say having multiple points of entrance and exit really benefits safety as well, because that allows police and fire better access to this property, which is key anytime you have a situation such as a robbery or really a fire in a building of this size. You know, you want to have the ability for people to get there quickly. You want to have ability for public service to not be hindered by a specific location. I don't know that it really affects the safety from a robbery standpoint as much as it does just, you know, having multiple points of access to a building of this size is going to be beneficial from a public safety standpoint, primarily fire and things like that. Okay.
Eric? Yeah, I have a question for Dave. In your proposed findings, you found that this entrance from 17th Street would be injurious to public. I'm curious on these paths that the city has. I'm guessing that there are these paths go across businesses and that there are entrances that cross these paths. Is there any sort of study or any data that shows there's been a bunch of accidents at these entrances, or a bunch of, just curious. Are you aware of any accidents that, you know, I assume you're talking about these like new asphalt bicycle paths that are everywhere. Yeah.
Let me see, I'm going to get to your question. So to clarify what's going on there, just so we're all clear, the property owner was working with the engineering department because the engineering department for the city is improving a path along 17th Street. That's completely separate of them talking to us. That was already happening. The only reason we actually even first heard about this petition was from engineering staff saying, hey, did you know? They told us that they're thinking of possibly redeveloping if you want to come to a meeting. Okay, so when engineering is doing an update, they can't mandate that adjacent developments lose entrances. That's not something that happens in the right-of-way acquisition process, right? So all of the entrances that they already have that engineering, you know, quote unquote, signed off on or thinks safe, that's not the preference of engineering or the city that those stay. It's that in the process of putting in those types of facilities and getting right-of-way from the adjacent property owners if necessary, that's just not, those aren't triggers for us as a city to be able to say, hey, let's clean this up and make this more pedestrian friendly. So they we do try to make them as friendly as possible, but doing a whole cloth redevelopment, as Mr. Brehop said, that's entirely different. That's a whole entirely different animal. You have to meet code entirely, period. So regardless of what was there before, oftentimes you'll hear, and we hear this at Plan Commission as well.
Yeah, I guess I'm not talking about what's there now. I'm talking about where these paths exist across the city now.
Is there data?
Are we having a bunch of accidents at entrances?
I wouldn't
across
say
the
that
city?
we're having a bunch of accidents and incidences. I would say that it is well known in our field that when you have those touch points where vehicles and pedestrians meet, that you want to have that be minimized. And that is part of the reason why the code is written the way that it is.
Thank you.
Quick question, I guess, Mr. Lindsay, maybe you can answer this. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you basically said if you can't get this entrance passed through for 17th Street, then you're really going to have to reconsider the entire plan for the site?
That's right, Mr. Ballard.
Okay, so, and I went through your letter to Mayor Hamilton as well. So obviously, this is, large development. You guys are, community-oriented bank, been around a long time. You're obviously making a very large capital investment with this, as well as employment, which I think is significant. So to me, I think the fact that you're saying this not happening, which I can't picture any other commercial building, let alone a bank, that only has one entrance, let alone in a residential street. That's an anomaly. And if somebody can show me something that compares to this with just one entrance on a residential street, I'd like to see it. I just really can't think of anything like that out there because the practicality isn't there. So I just wanted to make sure I was clear that you were saying without this is pretty much, I guess, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but a deal breaker, because you would have to then go and reconsider another site altogether, let alone a site that looks the way this site does, which to me, just from the blueprints and things you have with the plans, I mean, that's a beautiful looking building to me. That's a vast, vast improvement for that corner. So I think, again, I just wanted to make sure I was clear in your understanding of that.
That's right. We view this building, because of its location at 17th and College, a major entryway into the city of Bloomington, the downtown area at 17th, that we wanted this to be a visually, aesthetically pleasing building that reflected the character of Bloomington. But there is some practical nature to a bank branch and to a corporate office. And the practical nature means we need to have our customers be able to find us, to be able to get into our location and to get out of our location as conveniently as practical. And if that's not the case, with a significant investment in dollars that we're talking about, if it's limited to one entrance off of a smaller neighborhood street that customers are going to have difficulty finding or locating or using, practically speaking, we're going to have to look at other alternatives that give us better access. That's just what we have to do. We want to build this office. We want to be in Bloomington. We just, unfortunately, if we can't do it at this location, we're going to have to find something else, maybe outside the city, just outside the city or something like that, where we might have a little bit better access to our property.
Sure. One sort of follow-on. You talked about not being able to come in on College anymore.
Right.
I assume that's for the same reason you aren't allowed to come in on 17th either.
Yeah, our initial conversations with the city when we started talking, was that I would say when we were talking about the multi-use path and how that would be configured, which was going to be a change for us, we knew we were considering a new building. They were very explicit in telling us that College entrance and access, that driveway, would not be possible. So we picked the entrance that we felt like would be most appropriate and likely to be approved by the board here today, knowing that College was probably not going to be likely.
I'm kind of curious, because that seems like the main thoroughfare.
It is.
Why did you get any indication why that wouldn't be approved off of College?
You know, the planning staff basically told us that, you know, they kept going back to the UDO and the specifics that, you know, the requirement that it be on the lowest classification street. And so we were trying to be as accommodating as possible.
So it strikes me now that by moving it to 17th Street, you create a possible safety hazard with the new path that the city's trying to put in. But if you would put it on the main thoroughfare, you wouldn't have to, you could come in College, go out, whatever that last road is.
Yeah, Woodburn.
Woodburn.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, you've got site plans and whatnot, but from a safety perspective, is there, now it seems like that would be the more, I don't know, commercially, that'd be the commercial option I would want, and it seems like it's also now the safer option.
I would say, Eric, that is definitely something we considered as a bank and as a board. We would have preferred access from College from a business standpoint, for sure. We were just trying to accommodate the letter of the, you know, what the UDO was trying to do. There obviously is a sidewalk down College Avenue as well that pedestrians and even bicyclists could potentially use. Not on the width of the pedestrian path, but we can't control the, you know, where the city puts the pedestrian path. Our job is to just try and find something that's accommodative as possible to what they want and what we prefer to have. We obviously want to work with the city as best we can to when we design this building.
One last question. Do you know approximately how far away that entrance you're proposing on 17th Street is from the west, from Woodburn Avenue,
From Woodburn?
roughly?
Steve, do you have a footage number on that?
It's over 30 feet.
I don't know. Or Tim, maybe you have a footage number on that?
I guess if that little gap is 20 feet, then I can figure out that it's probably about 200 feet. Or, I'm sorry, about
30 to 40
about
feet.
100-ish, 80 to 100 feet. Okay.
That driveway is 175 feet from the eastern property line.
From
Oh,
College?
you're talking about the Woodburn
Yep.
cut.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. I thought you were talking about the 17th, from the corner.
I just,
Yep, understood.
because there's another intersection there, so I'm just, you know, it's not a country road where you're going unencumbered.
Right.
Yeah, thanks.
Any other questions for the petitioner? Okay, at this point then, we're going to go to the public for any comment. Is there anyone in the public space here before the board who would like to speak? If so, come forward to the podium. Seeing none, do we have anyone online?
If you want to speak online, either raise your hand or send a message to Jacqueline Scanlon, and we can acknowledge you so you can speak.
Send a message by chat, is that what you mean?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll give it a moment. For anyone that's online who would like to speak, raise your hand.
Eric, it's about 87 feet difference there.
I'm not seeing anyone. Are you seeing
Nope,
anyone?
I don't see
Okay,
anyone.
seeing no one. We'll have any final comments. You have right around 5 minutes left. Any final comments from any of the petitioners who'd like to speak? Now's the time you can do so. Seeing none, we do need a motion first before any further comments. Do we have a motion? You have to have a motion first at this point, but you'll have plenty of opportunity for comments. Do we have a motion?
Yes, but I want to make sure I word it properly. So my motion would be to approve both requested variances.
There are 3.
And I just want to make sure I get my,
You want to use the language
the
at the top?
language correct. On,
We'll pause for a moment.
so I would move to adopt the proposed findings for V-19-22 as far as it approves the driveway surface width, or excuse me, as far as it approves, yeah, the parking offset, but I would recommend, I'm going to screw this motion up. Basically,
Well, I think,
I'm trying to approve both.
yeah, you can
both
use
requests
the,
for
you can use,
variances.
just to
Maybe
be
I'm
helpful,
looking
you
at-
can use the recommendation as a basis of your motion, or you can simply motion that you're going to approve the requested variance from the petitioner.
Yeah, so I move to request the variances, excuse me, I move to approve the requested variances from the petitioner.
V-19-22.
V-19-22. Yep.
Okay, and thus ends the motion, and to be clear, that is the requested variance put in by the petitioner.
Correct.
So to vote affirmatively to that motion, Eric, that would be thus approving the plan that they put in front of us.
Correct.
Which would mean that you're not agreeing with the recommendations from the city.
Correct.
Copy that.
And are you including the one condition of approval that Gabriel had written in this report? It's on the screen.
Yes, that is the point of that, which was the front parking setback is approved for the site plan, including the building and parking lot design is submitted within this petition. But that would be part of the actual variance request, so it would be approved, would it not, if he asked for the variance to be approved?
It still needs to be included, just like we often do in these variances, so that it's clear that the site plan they're submitted is the one they're asking for, and they can't, add 10 new spaces in there or something like that.
Yeah, with the condition that the front parking setback variance is approved for the site plan, including building and parking lot design as submitted with the petition.
Okay, so before a second then, there's a motion in front of us to approve V-19-22 with the following condition of the front parking setback variance is approved for the site plan, including building and parking lot design is submitted within this petition. Is that an accurate summary of your motion?
Yes.
Okay, do I have a second, and then we'll go from there?
So we are approving the driveway location.
Hold on, so that's a second in front of us. Now,
Yeah,
your question.
no, so we are approving the drive location standards and the driveway surface width standard that the petitioner has requested.
That's my understanding from the question, but let's get it approved by the staff. Say it again, Fleming.
So for the staff, there were 3.
Correct.
We are approving all 3.
Correct.
As the petitioner requested. So the driveway location standards, the driveway surface width standards, and the front parking setback variance with the plan that is in place.
I know you'll have more discussion. Gabriel has pointed out, if you do choose to vote to approve the 2 variances we recommended denial on, we would suggest that you alter this condition in some way to incorporate those as well. So you could just change it to saying, this variance is approved for the site plan, including building and parking design is submitted, so that it would incorporate all 3 variances.
Okay.
And then also, the thing I'm sure Joe is waiting for me to say, we recommended denial on 2 variances. If you want to approve them, you have to propose findings.
Yes.
So we can either do that here live, or
Work on it afterwards.
or we
and
can
then-
work on it after and come back next month.
For the petitioner's sake, which he hasn't heard that before, is we're required when we deny something that we have to provide a finding. And we can do that either now here, or that can be done in the course of the next few weeks. We're going to come to you in a minute, so please hold that just until we get this cleared up. Okay?
Okay.
All right.
So one of the findings that I find is this is the peculiar site that has 3 streets. And typically a corner lot has 2 streets. And the other peculiar part is this is a commercial lot, which in a commercial lot, you will need to obviously provide access to a commercial. This is also a bank, which should have 2 different entrances because of the drive-through for safety. So can that be my reasons for the 2 driveways?
Yeah, you all can propose whatever findings you want included with your decision.
Okay.
Okay.
I know the UDO
Sure.
refers to corner lots.
Understood. No, I think that's
Yeah, I'll just
clearly
say,
stated.
yeah, I mean, in the definition of corner lot, it says minimum of 2. I mean, it does think about these lots, we do have them. And the reason that they're having to deal with 3 is because they're choosing to develop an entire block face.
I understand.
People don't do that as often, that's a choice.
Well, it is a unique situation on a unique lot.
Yeah, and I mean, yes, that's the argument that you'll be
That's the-
making in your
that's-
findings.
You're presenting that as our proposed findings. Now, are there any, that's clear?
Yeah, that's
Okay,
clear.
so are there any other comments or questions? Yeah, you can, at this point, talk about anything. Proposed findings, questions, comments. You could, you're free at this point to talk about anything before we call the question. What we don't have is an opportunity, though, for any more questioning of the
Sure,
petitioner and
sure,
the
I
staff.
understand.
It's, unless it's a procedural question, which that's all we've been asking is procedural.
Yeah, I think the proposed findings from staff, when they said by interfering with the flow of traffic on 17th and the planned multi-use path, two-way drive access on 17th may adversely impact the use and value of properties on 17th and in adjacent neighborhoods. To me, I'm gonna disagree with that. If you were to propose this to any owner of property, whether it's residential, investment, or commercial, anywhere around that, if you were to ask them, what do you want, what's there currently as a value add to what my property would be worth, or the proposed multi-million-dollar, 35,000 square foot, beautiful commercial building that would be put in, I could back this with data if I had time to find it, but coming from the real estate world, I can tell you that would be a no-brainer for any homeowner or any owner in that entire area. They would want this building in there. And I think it would also impact what we're talking about, which is the people living on Woodburn Avenue. That's if you narrow it and you bottleneck it to just Woodburn, you have detrimental impacts. So homeowners on that street would, I think, very much, if I lived on that street in that area, I'd very much be adamant that that would have a negative impact on the value of my property. So my finding is a counter argument to what the staff proposed findings were there.
How could I summarize that? As a finding.
Right. Sorry, that got
That's okay,
long-winded.
that's very helpful.
I would say let's see. Yeah, I would say not allowing access to 17th would adversely impact the use and value of properties on 17th, and only allowing access via Woodburn would have major detrimental impact, adverse impact on use and value of properties.
Okay, that's,
Them to, the board finds that the granting of the variance to allow two-way drive access on 17th Street will not be injurious to public health and safety, and conversely, requiring only access on Woodburn would be detrimental.
yes, that's concurred there. The other,
Okay, so we need to do the third one for that, and then we'll move to the next.
well, the other element I wanted to add to that is this three-sided development issue. So the findings of fact is that it is a three-sided development, two of which are commercial streets, one of which is residential. Therefore, the UDO would really have allowed the development of the access point through 17th based on only looking at the commercial streets, which is part of what you already have there, Jackie. But I think that's also a finding of fact, which is the board here is looking at the two commercial streets. Okay. What else do we need?
Okay, so for the third, the strict application of terms of the UDO, practical difficulties finding, I'm writing, the board finds that the drive location standards in the UDO, that while the drive location standards in the UDO explicitly anticipate the case of corner lots and require drive access to be provided on the lowest classified street, in this case, the third street is strictly residential, which is not ideal. 17th Street is the lowest classified commercial street and appropriate for vehicular access.
Correct.
Is that fine? Okay.
That's the gist of the 2 commercial, 1 residential. Oh, do we concur?
So then driveway pavement width, yeah, you guys want, yeah.
That was the next issue.
So I'll just remind you that Mr. Brehab said in his testimony that they could meet this if they needed to.
And that had to
So
do with
I'm not
that had to
sure.
do with the curved.
It's just the small,
And
so
it's a
you may
small-
find that it's a de minimis, right, you may find, right.
And having pulled into many lots
Right.
like this and had to jump over the curb, it just doesn't make sense.
You'd have to have a finding of fact on that, which would be, we find that it would be injurious to the safety, right?
Right.
Yeah, part of it is, and this is just for those of you who, this is what, newish kind of to you. Oftentimes, we find that the first 2 are not, we find that a variance meets those. That it's not injurious, it's not hurting the neighbors. It's just the third one, oftentimes when we recommend denial, that we can't kind of get to. So I think for the driveway pavement width, I understand, like you're saying, it's kind of de minimis. How does this, it's not really affecting the community or neighborhood, that's fine. It's the third one that we'll need. What do you think is causing a practical difficulty on this site that requires that they can't meet this variance?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the practical difficulty is the creating a natural sort of pull-in, and the practical difficulty is you can't come off 17th and then immediately be forced into a 90-degree turn. So there's something a little more natural that allows a car to spin around.
I think it's also the traffic. You're coming onto 17th and you're going to use I'm visualizing this as I'm going to use the drive-through. I have to immediately go to the left, and then there are cars coming from the drive-through from the right, and we're going to have to meet somewhere in there. Of course, people can wait, but you're coming from the street, you want to go as fast as you can into a safe haven. I think it will make it easier, and like you said, it's just so small. It's a little triangle. I know it doesn't look that way when you do it in a computer and you're measuring feet.
Where does that leave us, Jackie?
Sorry, just a moment.
Thank you.
Okay, so for the first 2, just based on what you've said, for number 1, the board finds that the variance is not injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community. The small area in excess of width maximums will not cause injury. Number 2, the board finds that the variance is not injurious to the adjacent properties and will not substantially adversely affect them. Again, the small area in excess of width maximums will not cause injury. And then for number 3, the board finds that the only way that the dimensions could be met would require difficult and possibly dangerous maneuvering from the 17th Street entrance. The small area that does not meet width requirements does not necessitate, or let me think here. Is that fine so far?
So far, yeah.
Okay, so then I just added the conditions are peculiar to the property because of the location of the proposed driveway related to the driveway entrance. Does that make sense?
And that is the motion. That is the motion. And that motion has been seconded.
I second it.
All right. No further comments? No further questions?
Just like to thank everyone for their patience and Joe for shepherding us through this, and Jackie as well.
You're welcome. Would you like to call the question?
Yeah, let's call the question.
Question's been called. Please call the roll.
Ballard,
Yes.
Burrell,
Yes.
Throckmorton,
Yes.
Coin.
Yes.
With that, the petition is granted as stated. Thank you for your patience. And with that, we are adjourned.